I'm proud to be the black sheep of the family. The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I stared at the email that would change everything. Subject line, acquisition complete, $50.2 million transfer confirmed. 5 years ago, my father called me a worthless disgrace who would amount to nothing. Today, I became worth more than his precious law firm had made in its entire 60-year history. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop of my downtown loft. Sarah Chen, my business partner and the only person who knew the full story of my family's betrayal. Holy shit, Alex. Did you see the final numbers? We're actually millionaires. Plural. With an M. Her voice crackled with disbelief through the speaker. 50.2, I whispered, still staring at the screen. The number felt surreal, like a typo that might disappear if I blinked too hard. TechCrunch wants an exclusive. Forbes is calling. And get this, your LinkedIn has blown up. 300 connection requests since the announcement went live an hour ago. I almost laughed. 300 strangers wanted to connect with me now, but my own parents hadn't spoken to me since March 15, 2019. The date was burned into my memory, the day they destroyed me in front of 200 wedding guests at my cousin Jennifer's reception. Alex, are you there? Yeah, sorry. Just processing. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, in a struggling downtown office building, my father Robert Chin Morrison and my mother Patricia were probably having their afternoon partners meeting, discussing which clients they'd have to drop next, which junior associates they'd have to let go. Morrison, Chen and Associates had been hemorrhaging money for 2 years, according to my LinkedIn reconnaissance and a few carefully placed questions to mutual acquaintances. There's something else, Sarah continued. Remember that commercial property you had me research? The Pinnacle building on 5th Street? My heart stopped. What about it? The owner's finally ready to sell. Apparently, he needs to liquidate fast for a divorce settlement. Asking price is $12 million, but my realtor thinks we can get it for 10. The Pinnacle building. 27 floors of prime downtown real estate, built in 1987. Home to a struggling family law firm on floors 15 through 18, locked into a lease that expired in exactly 8 months. I'd driven past that building every day for 5 years, watching my parents' cars in the parking garage, seeing their office lights burning late into the night as they fought to keep their legacy alive. The same legacy they demanded I sacrifice my dreams to preserve. Alex? You're scaring me with the silence. Buy it. What? Buy the building. Today. Offer $12 million, full asking price. Cash. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. That's a quarter of your entire payout. Do it. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She'd been there that night 5 years ago when I showed up at her dorm room, sobbing and homeless, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and a heart full of rage. She'd helped me build our company from nothing, working 18-hour days in her garage while I coded through the pain of losing my entire family. This is about them, isn't it? This is about justice. Through the window, the city sparkled in the late afternoon sun. In 8 months and 1 day, I would become my parents' landlord. The worthless disgrace they disowned would hold their future in my hands. The building purchase went through in 72 hours. By Friday afternoon, I was holding the keys to $12 million worth of prime real estate and the future of Morrison, Chen and Associates. Sarah insisted we celebrate at Meridian, the same upscale restaurant where my parents used to take me for important discussions about my future. To the new landlord of 5th Street, Sarah raised her glass, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Though I still think you're certifiably insane. Probably. I took a sip of the Macallan 25, the same scotch my father ordered whenever he closed a major case. It tasted like victory and regret in equal measure. But crazy just made us very rich. My phone lit up with another notification. The Forbes article had gone live an hour ago, from disowned to $50 million, the immigrant family's tech prodigy who made it alone. The irony wasn't lost on me, they'd gotten half the story wrong. My family wasn't proud immigrants who supported my entrepreneurial spirit. They were the reason I'd had to make it alone. Alex. Sarah's voice carried a warning tone I'd learned to recognize. There's something I need to tell you about the building. What kind of something? She pulled out her phone and scrolled through what looked like property records. My realtor did some digging after the sale closed. Your parents' firm isn't the only tenant having problems. The building's been hemorrhaging tenants for 18 months. Occupancy is down to 62%. So you just bought a money pit. The previous owner wasn't just selling because of his divorce, he was selling because the building's bleeding cash. Monthly operating costs are running about $80,000, but rental income is only covering about $55,000. I felt the scotch turn sour in my stomach. How long can I sustain that? At current burn rate? Maybe 3 years before you've eaten through most of your payout. Less if more tenants bail. Sarah leaned forward. Alex, I think you've been so focused on your parents that you didn't see the bigger picture. This building isn't just their prison, it might become yours. The restaurant suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. Through the window, I could see the Pinnacle building's upper floors, my parents' office lights already burning bright at 6 p.m. on a Friday. They were working late again, probably trying to save their dying practice. There's more. Sarah's fingers danced nervously around her wine glass. I may have done something stupid. Define stupid. I called my cousin Marcus. You remember Marcus Chen? My blood went cold. Marcus was Sarah's cousin, but he was also a junior associate at Morrison, Chen and Associates. Had been for 2 years, fresh out of law school and desperate for experience. Sarah and I had an unspoken agreement never to discuss the connection. Sarah, tell me you didn't. I asked him about the firm's situation. Hypothetically. Said I was researching commercial real estate investments. She couldn't meet my eyes. Alex, they're worse off than we thought. They hadn't made payroll twice in the last 4 months. Your dad had to take out a second mortgage on his house just to keep the lights on. And Marcus thinks they're maybe 6 weeks from bankruptcy. 8 if they're lucky. She finally looked up at me. Alex, if you evict them in 8 months, you won't be getting revenge. You'll be kicking a corpse. The scotch glass slipped from my numb fingers, amber liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like spilled blood. 6 weeks. After everything they'd put me through, my parents might not even survive long enough to see me become their landlord. Alex? Sarah reached across the table, but I pulled back. This changes nothing. The words came out harsher than I intended. They made their choice 5 years ago. Did they, though? Sarah's voice was gentle but relentless. Marcus told me something else. About why they're really struggling. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to leave, to go back to my loft and pretend the last 10 minutes hadn't happened. But Sarah was already talking. The firm started declining right after they cut you off. Your dad lost 3 major clients that year. Apparently, word got around about how they treated their own kid at Jennifer's wedding. The Asian business community is tight-knit, Alex. When Robert Chin Morrison publicly disowned his child for pursuing the American dream, it didn't play well. Stop. I stood up so abruptly my chair scraped against the marble floor. Other diners turned to stare, but I didn't care. Just stop. But Sarah wasn't finished. Marcus says your mom hasn't been the same since. She's been making mistakes, missing deadlines, forgetting court dates. Last month she broke down crying in front of a client. My mother doesn't cry. The words escaped before I could stop them. Patricia Chin Morrison was ice and steel, perfectly pressed suits and devastating cross-examinations. She built her reputation on never showing weakness. People change, Alex. Especially when they're drowning. I threw $300 bills on the table, enough to cover our meal 3 times over. Money I could afford to waste now, money that proved I'd succeeded without them. I need air. The Seattle evening was crisp, threatening rain. I walked the 6 blocks to the Pinnacle building without conscious thought, Sarah trailing behind me in her impractical heels. The lobby was empty except for a security guard reading a paperback novel behind the reception desk. Good evening, mister. The guard looked up expectantly. Morrison. Alexander Morrison. I'd legally changed my name back after the disownment, reclaiming my maternal grandfather's surname. I'm the new owner. His weathered face brightened. Oh. Mr. Morrison, welcome. I'm Frank Kowalski. Been working security here for 12 years. He stood, extending a calloused hand. Gotta say, we're all relieved to have new ownership. Previous guy let things slide pretty badly. What kind of things? Frank glanced around conspiratorially, then leaned closer. Elevator's been acting up for months, get stuck between 14 and 15 at least twice a week. HVAC system's older than my grandson. And don't get me started on the plumbing issues on floors 16 through 18. My parents' floors. Of course. The law firm up there's been real patient about it, though, Frank continued. Mrs. Chin Morrison, lovely lady, she always asks about my grandkids when she works late. Which is most nights, honestly. Her and Mr. Chin Morrison both. Sometimes I wonder if they're sleeping up there. They work late often. Oh, constantly. Especially the last couple years. I worry about Mrs. Chin Morrison sometimes, she looks so tired. And thin. Lost a lot of weight recently. Frank's expression grew concerned. Actually, just last week I found her sitting in the lobby at 2 a.m., just staring at nothing. When I asked if she needed help getting to her car, she looked at me like she didn't know where she was. Something cold settled in my chest. What did you do? Called Mr. Chin Morrison. He came down looking scared out of his mind, took her home. Next day they both acted like nothing happened. Frank shrugged. Probably just stress. Running a business is hard, especially in this economy. Through the lobby's glass windows, I could see the lights burning on the 16th floor. Even now, at nearly 8 p.m. on a Friday night, my parents were up there fighting for their survival. I'd spent 5 years dreaming of this moment, the moment I'd have power over them. But standing in the lobby of my building, listening to Frank talk about my mother's breakdown, victory tasted like ashes. Would you like me to show you up to their office? Frank asked, checking his watch. I mean, since you're the new owner and all. Might be good to introduce yourself. The suggestion hit me like ice water. Face them now. Here. I hadn't prepared for this moment. I'd imagined it happening in 8 months when their lease expired, with lawyers and eviction notices and the cold satisfaction of legal process. Not standing in a lobby at 8 p.m. on a Friday, learning that my mother was having what sounded suspiciously like panic attacks. That's not necessary, I managed. I'm just getting familiar with the property. Sarah appeared beside me, slightly out of breath from chasing me in heels. Alex, we should go. But Frank was already reaching for his phone. You know what, let me just give them a quick call. I bet they'd love to meet you. They've been so worried about the building selling, wondering if the new owner would jack up their rent or kick them out. I could put their minds at ease. No. The word came out sharper than intended. Frank looked startled, and I forced myself to lower my voice. I mean, I prefer to handle these things through proper channels. Legal notices, formal meetings. You understand? Oh. Sure, of course. Frank's enthusiasm dimmed. Professional protocols and all that. Through the elevator's glass panels, I watched the numbers climb. 10. 12, 14. 15. The elevator shuddered slightly as it passed the 15th floor, the mechanical problem Frank had mentioned. Then 16 lit up, and the doors opened. A woman stepped out, and for a moment I didn't recognize her. The Patricia Chin Morrison I remembered was formidable, 5'9" in heels, silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon, designer suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. This woman was smaller somehow, wearing a wrinkled blazer that hung loose on her frame. Her hair was still silver but shorter now, less precisely styled. She looked tired. She was walking toward the lobby, a stack of files clutched against her chest, when she saw us standing by the security desk. Her steps faltered. Good evening, Mrs. Chin Morrison, Frank called out cheerfully. Working late again, I see. I'd like you to meet Alexander. My name fell from her lips like a prayer or a curse, I couldn't tell which. The files slipped from her arms, scattering across the marble floor in a cascade of legal papers. She stood frozen, staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between hope and terror. Mom. The word escaped before I could stop it, a reflex from childhood that made my throat constrict. Frank looked between us, confusion creeping across his weathered features. Oh. Do you two know each other? Sarah stepped closer to me, a protective gesture I appreciated more than I could say. My mother's eyes tracked the movement, taking in Sarah's expensive dress, her confident posture, the way she positioned herself like a barrier between my family's past and my present. We used to, my mother said quietly. She looked down at the scattered papers, then back at me. You look successful. There was something in her voice I'd never heard before. Not pride exactly, but not dismissal either. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that the worthless disgrace they'd disowned had become something they hadn't expected. I am successful. I kept my voice level, professional. Congratulations on surviving another week, by the way. Frank tells me you've been having some building maintenance issues. Her face went pale. Frank talks too much. Do you know how much it costs to fix an elevator system in a building this age? HVAC repairs. Plumbing on 3 floors. I watched her expression shift from confusion to dawning realization. About $12 million worth of problems, I estimate. Alex, Sarah warned under her breath. But I was already moving past my mother, heading for the exit. Enjoy your weekend, Patricia. Try to get some sleep, you look like you need it. I was almost to the door when she called out. Alexander, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. Behind me, I could hear my mother's shallow breathing, the rustle of papers as she knelt to gather the scattered files. Frank had retreated behind his security desk, suddenly very interested in his paperback novel. Please. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Just 5 minutes. Sarah's hand found my elbow, a gentle warning. We could leave right now. Walk out those glass doors and never look back. In 8 months, when the lease expired, this would all be handled through lawyers and formal notices. Clean. Professional. Safe. But something in my mother's tone, the crack in that perfectly controlled voice I'd grown up fearing, rooted me to the spot. 5 minutes, I said without turning around. Your office. The elevator ride to the 16th floor was excruciating. My mother stood in one corner, clutching her recovered files like armor. Sarah pressed against the opposite wall, her eyes tracking the floor numbers like an escape route. I stared straight ahead at the brushed steel doors, trying to ignore how small the space felt, how my mother's perfume, still the same Chanel No. 5 after all these years, brought back memories I'd spent half a decade trying to bury. The elevator shuddered as we passed the 15th floor, just like Frank had warned. My mother's knuckles went white around her files. How long has it been doing that? I asked. 6 months. Maybe 7. She didn't look at me. We've learned to take the stairs most days. The doors opened onto a hallway I remembered from childhood visits, beige carpet, wood paneling, the Morrison, Chen and Associates logo etched into frosted glass doors. But everything looked shabbier now, worn around the edges. The carpet had stains that hadn't been there 5 years ago. 2 of the overhead lights were burned out. My mother's office was smaller than I remembered. The same mahogany desk, the same diplomas on the wall, but half the bookshelves were empty now. Boxes lined one wall, labeled storage in my father's precise handwriting. Downsizing? I asked, settling into the chair across from her desk, the same chair where I'd sat at 17, listening to lectures about responsibility and family legacy. Consolidating. She moved around to her chair but didn't sit, instead standing behind it like a shield. We don't need as much space anymore. Fewer clients. Her jaw tightened. The legal market has been challenging. Since March 15, 2019, specifically. The date hung in the air between us like a weapon. My mother's fingers gripped the back of her chair so hard her knuckles turned white. You remember the exact date. I remember everything. I leaned back, studying her face for cracks in that professional mask. I remember you standing up at Jennifer's reception. I remember you telling 200 people that I was no longer your son. I remember Dad saying I was a worthless disgrace who would amount to nothing. Alexander. I remember you forbidding the rest of the family from speaking to me. I remember sleeping in my car for 3 weeks because you froze my bank accounts. My voice stayed level, but each word felt like a blade. Tell me, Patricia, how much has the firm lost since then? She finally sank into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 58 years. Why are you here? I'm here because I own this building now. I pulled out my phone and showed her the property deed notification. As of Tuesday afternoon, I am your landlord. The blood drained from her face. You're, what? 12 million, cash. Your lease expires in exactly 8 months and 3 days. I tucked the phone away. I thought you should hear it from me personally, as a professional courtesy. Alex. Sarah's voice carried a note of warning I chose to ignore. My mother stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. You have $12 million. I have $50 million. The building was just a down payment. I stood, smoothing my jacket. The company I founded, the worthless pursuit that made me such a disgrace, just sold for $50.2 million. Forbes wrote an article about it. You should read it. She was quiet for so long I thought she might not respond at all. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Robert's going to have a heart attack. Dad's cardiac health isn't my concern anymore. He's been having chest pains for months. Stress, the doctor says. If you tell him about this. She looked up at me with something that might have been desperation. It could actually kill him. The revelation should have felt like victory. Instead, it sat heavy in my stomach like undigested food. Then maybe he should have thought about that before he destroyed his son in front of 200 people. I moved toward the door, but something in her expression stopped me. What aren't you telling me, Patricia? She opened her mouth, then closed it, shaking her head. But her eyes were fixed on something behind me, the hallway leading to my father's office. He's here, isn't he? Alexander, please. Just go. Don't let him see you like this. Her voice carried a panic I'd never heard before. He's not handling the stress well. The firm, the money problems, and now with the building selling to some unknown buyer. She trailed off, the implication hanging heavy between us. Some unknown buyer, I repeated. You mean me? Before she could answer, a door slammed in the hallway. Heavy footsteps approached, the same purposeful stride I remembered from childhood, though slower now, more labored. Patricia. I heard voices. Are we expecting? My father appeared in the doorway and stopped dead. Jesus Christ. Robert Chin Morrison had aged a decade in 5 years. His thick black hair was now completely silver, and the expensive suits I remembered had been replaced by a rumpled shirt and loosened tie. But his eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes that had torn apart opposing counsel in courtrooms across the city, still burned with the same intensity. Hello, Dad. Get out. His voice was rougher than I remembered, scraped raw around the edges. Get the hell out of my office. Actually, it's my office now. I pulled out my phone again, making sure he could see the screen. As of Tuesday, I own this entire building. You're looking at your new landlord. The color drained from his face, then rushed back in a wave of red fury. You little shit. You think you can? Robert, please. My mother was on her feet, moving between us. Your heart. 50 million, Dad. That's what my worthless disgrace of a company just sold for. I kept my voice conversational, professional. Forbes called me a prodigy. TechCrunch wants an exclusive interview. 300 business leaders tried to connect with me on LinkedIn in a single day. He braced himself against the doorframe, one hand pressed to his chest. For a moment I thought he might actually collapse, but then his lawyer instincts kicked in. 50 million. He said it like he was testing the words, looking for weakness. In what? Stock options. Deferred payments. I know how these tech deals work, Alexander. It's all smoke and mirrors. Cash. Verified funds. Already transferred. I watched his expression shift as the implications sank in. Want to see the bank statements? This is about revenge. His voice was steadier now, back on familiar ground. You bought this building to hurt us. I bought this building because it was a good investment opportunity. The fact that it houses a failing law firm is just serendipity. Sarah cleared her throat behind me. Alex, we should go. You have that conference call with the West Coast team in an hour. It was a lie, we had no conference call, but the reminder of my other life, my successful life, felt like armor. I had a team now. Employees. Responsibilities that extended far beyond this cramped office and the 2 people who'd raised me to believe I'd never amount to anything. 8 months, Dad. That's how long you have left on your lease. I straightened my jacket, the same gesture I'd watched him make 1,000 times before closing arguments. Use the time wisely. I was almost to the elevator when my father's voice followed me down the hall. Alexander. Not Alex, not son. Alexander. Formal. Legal. What do you want? I stopped, my finger hovering over the elevator call button. What did I want? 5 years ago, the answer had been simple. I wanted them to hurt the way they'd hurt me. I wanted them to feel powerless, abandoned, worthless. Now, looking back at my father's face, older, grayer, marked by the weight of failure, the answer felt more complicated. I want you to remember March 15, 2019, I said finally. I want you to remember every word you said to me that night. And then I want you to ask yourself if this is really about revenge, or if it's just consequences finally catching up. The elevator doors closed on their stunned faces, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt something that might have been peace. The elevator descended in silence, but my hands were shaking. Sarah watched the floor numbers count down, 15, 14, 13, before finally speaking. That was brutal, Alex. Even for you. They deserved it. But the words felt hollow, mechanical. My father's hand pressed against his chest, my mother's terrified expression, those images were already burning themselves into my memory alongside the ones from 5 years ago. Did they, though? Did you see how thin your mom got? And your dad? Sarah shook her head. I thought he was going to collapse right there. The lobby felt different now, charged with aftermath. Frank looked up from his paperback expectantly, but I walked past without acknowledgement, pushing through the glass doors into the Seattle night. The cool air hit my face like a slap, clearing away the stale office smell and my mother's lingering perfume. Mr. Morrison. Frank's voice called from behind us. Is everything all right? I turned back to see him standing in the doorway, genuine concern creasing his weathered face. The Chin Morrisons, they're good people. Whatever's going on, maybe we could. There's nothing going on, Frank. Just business. I pulled out my wallet and handed him a $100 bill. Buy something nice for those grandkids you mentioned. Back in my loft an hour later, I stood at the windows overlooking the city, trying to process what had just happened. The Pinnacle building was visible in the distance, several floors still lit up. My parents were probably still up there, trying to figure out what my ownership meant for their survival. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Sarah, sent from her car in the parking garage downstairs, we need to talk. Coming up. She appeared 5 minutes later with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my parents' monthly grocery budget. We ate in silence for a while, the city lights twinkling below us like scattered diamonds. Marcus called me, she said finally. About 20 minutes ago. I set down my chopsticks. What did he say? Your parents are freaking out. Not angry freaking out, scared freaking out. Your dad's been pacing his office for an hour, and your mom. Sarah hesitated. Marcus says she's been crying. Actually crying, Alex. He's never seen her cry before. The pad Thai turned to cardboard in my mouth. So maybe we need to pump the brakes here. I know they hurt you, but this isn't just about revenge anymore. This is about survival, theirs and yours. What do you mean, mine? Sarah pulled out her tablet and opened what looked like a financial spreadsheet. I've been running numbers on the building. Even if you evict them and find new tenants, you're looking at 18 months minimum to break even. And that's assuming you can fill all the vacant space, which means major renovations. She scrolled down, highlighting rows of expenses I hadn't considered. New elevator system, $800,000. HVAC overhaul, $2.3 million. Bringing the plumbing up to code, another $1 million minimum. By the time you factor in lost rental income during construction, you're looking at $5 million in improvements before you see a dime of profit. I can afford it. Can you? Your $50 million is going to be about 32 after taxes. Minus the 12 you already spent on the building, minus 5 more for renovations. Alex, you could burn through 2/3 of your payout trying to make this work. I walked back to the window, pressing my palms against the cool glass. In the distance, one more light had gone out in the Pinnacle building. 16 floors were now dark, only the 17th floor still glowed. There's something else, Sarah continued. Marcus told me why your parents are working so late these days. They're not just trying to save the firm, they're trying to finish their existing cases before they have to shut down. They don't want to abandon their clients. How noble of them. Alex. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. What if they try to settle with you? What if they apologize? The question hung in the air like smoke. In all my fantasies of revenge, I'd never considered that possibility. My parents didn't apologize, they were too proud, too certain of their own righteousness. Robert Chin Morrison had never backed down from a fight in his life. But the man I'd seen tonight, graying and bent with stress, clutching his chest, that wasn't the invincible father who dominated my childhood. My phone buzzed against the counter. Unknown number, but the area code was local. Hello. Alexander. My father's voice, rough with exhaustion. We need to talk. I thought we just did. Not like this. Not with your mother listening, not in the office. A pause, filled with the sound of traffic in the background. I'm in my car outside your building. 5 minutes. Please. The line went dead before I could respond. I looked at Sarah, who had clearly heard enough of the conversation to understand. This is either the best thing that could happen, she said, or the worst. Through the window, I could see a black Mercedes sedan parked across the street, hazard lights blinking. My father's car, the same one he'd driven me to school in, the same one he'd refused to let me borrow for senior prom because I was irresponsible. Now he was sitting in it outside my building at 10 p.m. on a Friday night, asking for 5 minutes of my time. What are you going to do? Sarah asked. I was already reaching for my jacket. The lobby felt different at night, shadows stretched longer, Frank's security desk lamp creating pools of warm light against the marble floor. My father stood near the windows, hands clasped behind his back in that familiar courtroom pose. But his shoulders weren't as straight as I remembered, and the expensive wool coat couldn't hide how much weight he'd lost. You came, he said without turning around. 5 minutes. You said 5 minutes. He nodded toward the seating area, leather chairs arranged around a glass coffee table that probably cost more than most people's cars. We sat across from each other like opposing counsel, the table a neutral zone between us. $50 million. He said it like he was still trying to process the number. When you were 16, you couldn't balance your checking account. When I was 16, you controlled my checking account. There's a difference. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Fair point. He leaned back, studying me with those sharp lawyer eyes. You look like your grandfather. Which one? Alexander Morrison. My father-in-law. Your namesake. His voice carried an odd note of pride. Regret? He would have been proud of you. Building something from nothing. American dream and all that. Don't. The word came out harsher than I intended. Don't you dare try to rewrite history. You called my company a joke. You said I was throwing away everything you'd built. I was wrong. The admission hit me like a physical blow. Robert Chin Morrison didn't admit mistakes, not in court, not in business, not in life. He found angles, technicalities, ways to be technically correct even when he was completely wrong. What? I was wrong about your company. Wrong about your potential. Wrong about. He gestured vaguely between us. A lot of things. I stared at him, searching for the trap, the legal maneuvering that would turn this admission into some kind of advantage. Is this where you ask me not to evict you? Appeal to family loyalty? No. He pulled an envelope from his coat pocket, thick cream paper with the Morrison, Chen and Associates letterhead. This is where I save you from making the same mistake I made. What mistake? Letting pride destroy everything that matters. He slid the envelope across the table. That's our formal notice of lease termination. We'll be out by the end of next month. My hands went numb. What? You heard me. We're closing the firm. His voice was steady, but I caught the tremor underneath. Patricia and I talked after you left. We can't make payroll past December anyway, and now that you own the building. He shrugged. It seemed cleaner to end it on our terms. I opened the envelope with shaking fingers. Legal letterhead, formal language, my father's signature at the bottom next to my mother's. Lease termination effective November 30th, 2024. 6 weeks away. You're giving up. We're being realistic. The firm's been dying for 2 years, Alexander. Your ownership just makes it official. He leaned forward, and I caught a whiff of the cologne he'd worn my entire childhood. But that's not why I'm here. Then why? I'm here because Marcus Chin called Patricia an hour ago. Sarah's cousin. Small world, isn't it? His lawyer smile was sharp enough to cut glass. He mentioned that Sarah's been asking questions about our financial situation. Hypothetical questions about commercial real estate investments. My stomach dropped. Dad. She's been feeding you information for months, hasn't she? Our client list, our billing problems, which tenants are leaving the building. He nodded at my expression. I thought so. Very thorough reconnaissance, counselor. It's not industrial espionage, it's public records and casual conversation. It's also something else. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like legal documents. It's grounds for a restraint order. Corporate harassment. Targeted harassment of a struggling business. You're bluffing. Am I? Judge Martinez owes me 3 favors from the Westbrook merger case. How do you think she'd react to evidence that a $50 million tech mogul has been systematically gathering intelligence on his parents' failing law firm? His eyes glittered with something like the old fire. Even if it doesn't stick long term, I could tie up your building purchase in court for months. Maybe years. The leather chair suddenly felt like a trap. This was the father I remembered, calculating, ruthless, always 3 moves ahead. The vulnerable man I'd seen upstairs had been replaced by the shark who'd built Morrison, Chen and Associates from nothing. What do you want? What I've always wanted, son. What's best for this family? He tucked the phone away. You're going to sell me that building. Like hell I am. For exactly what you paid. $12 million. I'll have the paperwork drawn up by Monday morning. His smile widened. Consider it a graduation present. Proof that my worthless son actually amounted to something after all. The words were meant to sting, but they bounced off me like water. I'd heard worse from strangers on the internet. You don't have $12 million, Dad. You can't even make payroll. No. But I know someone who does. He pulled out a second envelope, this one bearing the logo of Goldman Sachs Private Wealth Management. Inside was a cashier's check made out to Alexander Morrison for exactly $12 million. Jennifer's wedding fund, he said quietly. Your cousin's inheritance from her grandmother. She heard about our situation and offered to invest in a family business. Jennifer. My cousin who'd gotten married 5 years ago while I got disowned in front of her wedding guests. The same wedding where my parents had announced I was no longer part of the family. She knows you own the building, Alexander. Knows what you plan to do with it. His voice carried a weight that made my chest tight. She says if we're going to destroy each other over pride and old wounds, we should at least do it honestly. Face to face, not through real estate transactions and legal maneuvering. I stared at the check, trying to process what was happening. My carefully planned revenge was crumbling, replaced by something more complicated, more dangerous. A conversation. The check felt heavier than paper should, weighted with implications I wasn't ready to face. Jennifer's money. My cousin who'd stood silently 5 years ago while her wedding reception became the stage for my public destruction. She wants to buy the building to save you, I said, my voice barely steady. How touching. She wants to buy the building because she thinks we're all idiots. My father's laugh was bitter. Her exact words were, Uncle Robert, you raised the smartest kid in the family and then threw him away over a temper tantrum. Now you're both going to bankrupt yourselves trying to prove who's more stubborn. I set the check down like it might explode. What makes her think I'll sell? Because you're smarter than I am. And because deep down, you know this isn't about justice anymore, it's about 2 wounded animals trying to see who can bleed the other one dry first. He leaned back, studying my face. The building's hemorrhaging money, Alexander. Even if you evict us, even if you renovate, you're looking at years before you see profit. Jennifer ran the numbers, she's a CPA now, did you know that? Graduated top of her class from Wharton. Of course she did. The golden child who'd followed the approved path while I've been cast out into the wilderness. And if I don't sell? Then you spend the next 5 years pouring money into a sinking ship while Patricia and I close the firm anyway. Everyone loses except the contractors you'll hire to fix 30-year-old infrastructure. He gestured toward the window, where the Pinnacle building's lights twinkled in the distance. Or you take the $12 million, break even on your investment, and we all walk away clean. Clean. I tasted the word like poison. There's nothing clean about this, Dad. You can't write a check big enough to erase what you did to me. Something shifted in his expression, the lawyer mask slipping to reveal something raw underneath. You think I don't know that? You think I don't replay that night every goddamn day? Do you? Patricia hasn't slept through the night since March 15, 2019. She has panic attacks in grocery stores because she's afraid she'll run into someone who was at that wedding. I've lost 30 pounds because food tastes like cardboard when you're choking on your own words. His hands clenched into fists on the glass table. We destroyed our son in public, Alexander. The guilt is eating us alive. Good. The word slipped out before I could stop it, cruel and sharp. You should feel guilty. You should lose sleep. You should. We should what? Die. Is that what you want? His voice cracked like a whip. Because that's where this is heading. The stress is killing Patricia, literally killing her. She had a cardiac episode last month that she made me promise not to tell anyone about. The doctor says if she doesn't reduce her stress levels. The lobby tilted around me. What kind of episode? The kind where I found her unconscious on our kitchen floor at 6 a.m. with our divorce papers scattered around her. He pulled out his phone, showing me a photo that made my stomach lurch, my mother on a hospital gurney, oxygen mask over her face, looking small and fragile in a way that violated everything I thought I knew about her. She'd been working on them all night. Trying to protect me from losing everything if her half of the firm gets seized for medical bills. I couldn't breathe. The photo wavered in my vision as my hands started shaking. She wants to divorce you. She wants to save me. Same way she's been trying to save everyone else. He tucked the phone away. The firm's not failing because of bad business decisions, son. It's failing because your mother can't function anymore. Can't concentrate, can't remember deadlines, can't sleep. Every client we've lost, every case we've botched, it all traces back to her falling apart over what we did to you. The leather chair felt like quicksand, pulling me down into something I wasn't equipped to handle. This wasn't the clean revenge I'd fantasized about. This was messy and complicated and absolutely terrifying. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth before you make your decision. And because. He paused, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Because I need you to understand that whatever you choose to do with that building, with that check, with us, it ends here. Tonight. Patricia can't survive another 5 years of this war. The check lay between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. My father's revelation about my mother's health hung in the air, transforming everything I thought I knew about the past 5 years. The revenge fantasy I'd nurtured since 2019 was cracking apart, revealing something far more complex underneath. "You're lying," I said, but the words felt hollow. "This is just another manipulation. Another legal strategy. Look at me, Alexander." His voice was quiet, stripped of all courtroom theatrics. "Have you ever known me to use your mother's health as a bargaining chip?" I wanted to say yes, to paint him as the calculating monster who'd fit neatly into my narrative of justified revenge. But even at his worst, even during our most vicious fights, my father had always been protective of my mother. It was one of the few admirable things about him. "The cardiac episode," I said carefully. "When?" "October 15th. 3 weeks ago." He pulled out a hospital bracelet from his wallet, the plastic worn from handling. "Patricia Chin Morrison," it read, followed by a patient ID number and date. She'd been up all night working on the Henderson divorce case, trying to make up for missing a deposition the week before. I found her at dawn, scattered legal papers everywhere, her laptop still open to LegalZoom. LegalZoom? Divorce filing software. She was trying to figure out how to protect my assets if she died or became incapacitated. His laugh was bitter. 40 years of marriage, and she was researching how to leave me without destroying me financially. I studied the hospital bracelet, looking for signs of forgery, any indication this was an elaborate lie. But the plastic was authentic, the printing crisp, the wear patterns consistent with something carried for weeks. "Assuming this is real," I said slowly, "assuming Mom is actually sick, that doesn't erase what you both did to me." "No, it doesn't." He took the bracelet back, handling it like something precious. "But it should factor into what happens next. You want consequences for our actions? You've got them. The firm is dying, your mother is dying, and I'm watching everything I built turn to ash because of words I spoke in anger 5 years ago." A new thought struck me, cold and unwelcome. "How long have you known I owned the building?" "Since Tuesday night. I ran a property search when we heard about the sale." He leaned forward, and I caught the scent of the same aftershave he'd worn throughout my childhood. "Do you know what my first emotion was when I saw your name on the deed?" I didn't want to know, but I found myself asking anyway. "What?" "Pride." The word hit me like a physical blow. My son, my brilliant, stubborn, impossible son, had just outmaneuvered his old man in the most spectacular way possible. "You didn't just succeed despite us, Alexander. You succeeded enough to buy our entire world and hold it in your hands." "Stop." The word came out rougher than I intended. "Don't you dare try to make this heartwarming. I'm not trying to make it anything. I'm telling you the truth." He stood, pacing to the windows that overlooked the city. "You bought that building to hurt us, and it worked. But now you have a choice to make, and unlike the choice Patricia and I made 5 years ago, this one you'll have to live with for the rest of your life." "What choice?" He turned back to me, and in the lobby's dim lighting, he looked every one of his 62 years. "Whether you're going to be the man who destroys a dying woman to prove a point, or the man who's bigger than his parents ever were." The check seemed to pulse on the table between us, $12 million that could end this cleanly, professionally. No more late-night confrontations, no more guilt, no more watching my mother waste away from stress and shame. But it also meant letting them off the hook. Again. "You want to know what the real choice is, Dad?" I stood up, my voice echoing off the marble walls. "The choice is whether I'm going to let you rewrite history again. Make yourself the victim in a story where you destroyed your own child." His face hardened. "I'm not rewriting anything. Mom's panic attack started in 2019. Her health problems. The firm's decline." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the screenshots I'd been collecting for months. "I've been tracking your financials through public records. Morrison, Chen and Associates was already hemorrhaging clients in 2018. The Henderson account you mentioned? You lost them 6 months before you disowned me." The color drained from his face. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I'm not the same naive kid you threw away, Robert." Using his first name felt like drawing a blade. "I'm a tech CEO who knows how to research his investments. Your firm was failing before that wedding, before Mom's supposed breakdown, before any of this became about me." I swiped through more screenshots, court records, business filings, local newspaper archives. "The Yamamoto Group dropped you in January 2019. Peterson and Associates terminated their contract in February. By March, you'd already laid off 3 junior partners." I looked up at him. "Want to tell me again how this is all about guilt over what you did to your son?" My father sank back into his chair, suddenly looking deflated. "You don't understand the full picture." "Then explain it. All of it. No more manipulation, no more playing the victim." I leaned forward, using every intimidation technique I'd watched him deploy in his office over the years. Why was the firm really failing? What happened in 2018 that started this death spiral? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The Brennan case." I'd never heard that name before. "What's the Brennan case?" "Medical malpractice. Pediatric cardiac surgery gone wrong. 8-year-old girl named Emma Brennan died because her surgeon was operating while intoxicated." His hands trembled as he spoke. "Her parents came to us for justice. We took the case on contingency, no fee unless we won. And I was arrogant. Cocky. I thought it was a slam dunk, so I didn't prepare properly. Didn't investigate thoroughly enough." He buried his face in his hands. "The defense found a technicality I'd missed. A filing deadline I'd blown because I was too busy celebrating my inevitable victory. The case got dismissed." The lobby felt suddenly cold. The family got nothing. Nothing. 8-year-old Emma Brennan died for nothing because her lawyer was too proud to do his homework. He looked up at me with eyes that seemed haunted. "Her father killed himself 3 months later. Left a note saying he couldn't live knowing his daughter would never get justice." My stomach lurched. "Dad. Word got around, Alexander. Seattle's legal community is small, and news travels fast when Robert Chin Morrison, the great crusader for immigrant families, lets down the most vulnerable clients of all. The clients started leaving. The referrals dried up. Other firms stopped partnering with us. I stared at him, trying to process this revelation. Why didn't you tell me? Why let me think it was about the wedding, about Mom's guilt? Because the truth is worse. His laugh was hollow. Your mother's panic attacks aren't from guilt about disowning you, son. They're from watching me destroy innocent families through my own arrogance. The stress of covering for my mistakes, making excuses to clients, trying to hold together a firm led by a man who got a child's father killed through sheer negligence. The check on the table seemed to mock me now, $12 million that couldn't buy back Emma Brennan's life or undo the cascade of destruction that had followed. So what was the wedding about then? Why destroy me in public if you were already destroying yourselves? Because I needed someone else to blame. The admission hung between us like a death sentence. My father's words echoed in the marble lobby, I needed someone else to blame. You made me your scapegoat. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else. Emma Brennan died because of your negligence, but you turned me into the family disgrace to distract from your own failure. Alexander. No. I stood up so fast the leather chair scraped against the floor. You let everyone think you were the heartbroken father whose ungrateful son abandoned the family legacy. Meanwhile, you were the one who killed that little girl through sheer arrogance. His face crumpled. I know what I did. I live with it every day. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been living with my exile instead. The rage I'd carried for 5 years was transforming into something colder, more focused. Tell me about the wedding, Robert. Tell me how you decided to sacrifice your son to save your reputation. He was quiet for almost a minute, staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Patricia wanted to postpone. Said we were in no emotional state to attend a family celebration. But Jennifer's grandmother, your great-aunt Helen, she was dying. Pancreatic cancer. The wedding was moved up so she could attend. And Helen was the one who'd connected us to half our client base over the years. Immigrant families trust family recommendations, Alexander. If we'd missed that wedding, if Helen had died thinking we didn't respect the family. He shrugged helplessly. We couldn't afford to lose any more connections. The calculation was breathtaking in its coldness. They'd attended my cousin's wedding not out of love or obligation, but as a business networking opportunity while their firm collapsed around them. So you decided to throw me under the bus instead. You were already defying us. Already choosing your startup over law school, over the firm, over everything we'd built. His voice gained strength, falling back into old justifications. When Helen asked why you weren't applying to join the practice, when the whole family started questioning our parenting. You panicked. I saw an opportunity to control the narrative. Make it about your rebellion, your lack of respect for family values. He looked up at me with something that might have been shame. If the community was going to judge our family anyway, better they judge us for having a defiant son than for having a father who killed children through incompetence. I felt something break inside my chest, not with the sharp pain of betrayal but with the dull ache of finally understanding. You planned it. The whole confrontation was premeditated. Patricia begged me not to. Said we should handle it privately, after the wedding. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn from years of handling. I wrote it down beforehand. What I was going to say to make sure the family understood this was your choice, not our failure. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. My father's neat handwriting, dated March 14, 2019, the day before the wedding. Asterisk key points for A's confrontation, emphasize his rejection of family values. Mention the money we've invested in his education that he's wasting. Make it clear this is about respect and gratitude, not our professional difficulties. Patricia should support publicly but can show emotion, mothers are expected to be conflicted. End with formal disownment to show serious consequences for betraying family trust, asterisk. You wrote a script. My voice was hollow. You wrote a fucking script for destroying your son in public. Alexander, please understand. I understand perfectly. I folded the paper and put it in my own pocket. I understand that Emma Brennan's death was just the beginning. You were so desperate to hide your guilt that you murdered your own son's future to save your reputation. That's not. 8 months, Dad. I picked up Jennifer's check and tore it in half, letting the pieces flutter to the marble floor. Your lease expires in 8 months, and when it does, I'm going to evict you personally. Not through lawyers, not through property managers. Me. His face went white. The building will bankrupt you. Maybe. But it will definitely destroy you first. I headed for the elevator, then stopped and turned back. Give my regards to Patricia. Tell her I hope she lives long enough to see what consequences actually look like. The elevator doors closed on my father's stricken face, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt the cold satisfaction of perfect justice. But by the time I reached my loft, that satisfaction had curdled into something that tasted like ash and regret. Sarah was waiting in my loft when I got back, pacing by the windows with her phone pressed to her ear. She ended the call when she saw me and immediately poured 2 glasses of wine that were far too large for the late hour. Marcus called again, she said without preamble. Your parents are still at the office. It's past midnight, Alex. What the hell did you say to your father? I collapsed onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline from our confrontation was wearing off, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness that felt like it might never fade. I told him the truth. About Emma Brennan. About why he really destroyed me at that wedding. Sarah's face went pale. Oh, Alex. You knew about the Brennan case. Wait. I sat up sharply. You knew about Emma Brennan. You knew and didn't tell me. She set down her wine glass with shaking hands. Marcus mentioned it months ago, but he made me promise not to say anything. Client confidentiality, family loyalty, you know how it is. No, I don't know how it is. My voice was rising despite my exhaustion. My best friend and business partner knew the real reason my life got destroyed, and she kept it from me for months. It wasn't my secret to tell. And honestly, I thought you already knew. I thought that's why you were so focused on revenge, because you understood what your father had really done. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I thought they disowned me because I embarrassed them by choosing tech over law. Turns out they disowned me because Dad needed a scapegoat for killing an 8-year-old girl through sheer negligence. Sarah winced. Marcus says your father hasn't been the same since that case. He barely sleeps, can't focus during meetings. And your mother. My mother helped him plan it. I pulled out the folded paper from my jacket pocket. March 14, 2019. They wrote a script for my public execution. She read it in silence, her expression growing more horrified with each line. Alex, this is sociopathic. This is what $50 million in revenge funding just bought me. The knowledge that my parents aren't just proud and traditional, they're actually monsters who sacrifice their own child to cover up professional malpractice. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, *Alexander, this is Jennifer. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Pike Place Market. Please come, *. I showed the message to Sarah, who frowned. Your cousin. The one whose wedding money your dad tried to use. The same one who stood there 5 years ago and watched them destroy me without saying a word. I deleted the message without responding. She can wait in the market until it closes for all I care. But even as I said it, I was curious. Jennifer Chin Nakamura had been the golden child of our extended family, perfect grades, perfect career, perfect marriage to a tech executive she'd met at Stanford. If she was offering to buy the building with her own money, there had to be more to the story. Sarah was scrolling through something on her tablet, her expression growing increasingly troubled. Alex, there's something else you need to see. I've been monitoring local business news, and there's going to be an article in tomorrow's Seattle Times business section. She turned the screen toward me, showing a preview of an article titled, Tech Mogul's Family Revenge, Local Law Firm Faces Eviction by Estranged Son. How did they find out already? Someone talked. Maybe Marcus, maybe your parents, maybe building management. She scrolled down to show quotes that made my blood run cold. Alexander Morrison was always brilliant but vindictive, says a family source who requested anonymity. His parents tried to guide him toward stability, but he chose to hold grudges instead. The article painted me as the villain, the ungrateful son who'd struck it rich and immediately moved to destroy his struggling parents. No mention of Emma Brennan, no context about the wedding confrontation, nothing about the script my father had written. They're controlling the narrative again, I said quietly. Even now, even after everything, they're still making themselves the victims. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Chen, Sarah's cousin, my parents' junior associate, the unwitting source of information I'd used to plan this whole revenge scheme. Don't answer it, Sarah warned. But I was already swiping to accept the call. Marcus. Working late. Mr. Morrison. His voice was formal, strained. I'm calling to inform you that I've submitted my resignation to Morrison, Chen and Associates, effective immediately. Because of me. Because I can't work for people who would use family connections to manipulate business intelligence, and I can't associate with family members who would use that intelligence to destroy vulnerable people. The accusation in his voice was unmistakable. What you're doing to your parents is cruel, Mr. Morrison. Whatever they did to you, they don't deserve this. The line went dead before I could respond. Sarah was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, disappointment mixed with something that might have been fear. He thinks we're the monsters now, she said quietly. Through the windows, I could see the Pinnacle building in the distance. Only one floor was still lit up, the 17th floor, where my parents were probably working through the night, trying to figure out how to survive the next 8 months. For the first time since buying the building, I wondered if I'd become exactly what they'd always said I was, vindictive, ungrateful, and willing to destroy everything in my path to prove a point. 3 days after Marcus's resignation call, I found myself standing outside Pike Place Market at 9:45 a.m., cursing my own weakness. I told myself I wouldn't come, that Jennifer could sit at whatever coffee shop she'd chosen until the fish vendors went home. But curiosity had won out over pride, just like it always did. She was waiting at a corner table in the original Starbucks, looking exactly like I remembered but older around the eyes. Jennifer Chin Nakamura, 31 years old, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blazer that probably cost more than most people's rent. The same expensive taste that ran in our family, funded by the same web of connections and expectations that had ultimately destroyed me. You came, she said, standing to embrace me. I stepped back, keeping the small round table between us like a buffer zone. You said it was important. Make it fast. Her smile faltered, but she gestured to the chair across from her. Coffee. I already ordered you a double-shot Corditu. You always loved those when we were kids visiting Grandma Chen. The memory hit unexpectedly. Summers at our grandmother's house in the International District, Jennifer and I racing through the narrow aisles of Wajimaya while the adults argued about business and tradition in rapid-fire Mandarin. We'd been close once, before college and career expectations and family loyalty had drawn lines between us. I don't have time for nostalgia, Jennifer. Say whatever you came to say. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to what looked like a news article. The Seattle Times piece went live this morning. Have you seen the comments section? I hadn't. After seeing the preview, I'd instructed Sarah to monitor the coverage while I tried to pretend the outside world didn't exist. I don't read comments on news articles. It's digital poison. This one you should read. She turned the phone toward me. Specifically comment number 37. The username was MB_Father 2019. My stomach dropped even before I read the words. Mr. Morrison's parents killed my daughter through legal malpractice and then destroyed their own son to cover their shame. Alexander Morrison is not the villain in this story. Jesus Christ. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the replies. The comment had sparked a war zone, people demanding details, others calling it fake, family friends defending my parents, strangers taking sides based on incomplete information. How many people have seen this? 47,000 shares as of an hour ago. Local news stations are calling it a developing story. Jennifer's voice was carefully neutral. Someone leaked the Brennan case details to Emma's father. He's been posting about it all morning. I kept reading. More details about Emma Brennan's death, about the malpractice case, about how my father's negligence had led to a family's destruction. But also about the wedding, about my public disownment, about connections someone had drawn between the timeline of the firm's decline and my exile. The narrative is shifting, Alex. People are starting to understand that maybe you weren't the ungrateful son. Maybe you were the scapegoat. So. But even as I said it, I felt something loosening in my chest. For 5 years, I carried the weight of being the family disappointment, the selfish child who'd abandoned his duty. Seeing strangers online defending me, recognizing the manipulation I'd endured, it felt like validation I hadn't known I needed. So now you have a choice to make, Jennifer continued. You can ride this wave of public sympathy and destroy Uncle Robert completely. Or you can be the bigger person and show mercy. Mercy. The word tasted bitter. Where was mercy when they planned my destruction like a legal strategy? Where was mercy when you sat at your wedding reception and watched them tear me apart? Her composure cracked for the first time. You want to know where I was? I was in the bathroom throwing up from panic, wondering if I should call security to stop it. You threw up but you didn't stop it. I leaned back, studying her face for cracks in that perfectly composed mask. 5 years, Jennifer. 5 years I've wondered if anyone in that room gave a damn about what was happening to me. I was 26 and terrified. Uncle Robert he was like a force of nature when he was angry. You know that. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like it could anchor her. But I should have done something. Anything. I've regretted it every day since. The admission hung between us, but it felt too little, too late. Regret doesn't undo damage, Jennifer. No, but action might. She pulled out an iPad, swiping through what looked like financial documents. That check Dad tried to give you. It wasn't just my inheritance money. It was my entire liquid net worth. Every stock option, every investment, my emergency fund, everything. Why would you liquidate everything for a failing law firm? Because it's not about the firm, Alex. It's about Emma Brennan. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I've been sending money to her family anonymously for 3 years. College funds for her siblings, therapy costs for her mother, rent assistance when her father couldn't work. $25,000 a month, every month. The math was staggering. 3 years at $25,000 monthly, she'd spent almost $1 million on a family she barely knew. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia don't know, she continued. They think the family just moved on. But Emma's mother, Sarah Brennan, she's been writing me letters. Thanking the anonymous donor for keeping her family alive after they lost everything. I stared at my cousin, the golden child I'd resented for years, seeing her clearly for the first time. You've been carrying their guilt. Someone had to. And I thought if I could help the Brennans rebuild their lives, maybe it would balance the scales somehow. Make up for what our family destroyed. That's not how justice works, Jennifer. Isn't it? She turned the iPad toward me, showing bank statements that made my chest tight. Regular transfers to Brennan Family Trust, amounts that added up to more money than most people saw in a lifetime. Emma's little brother starts at Seattle Children's Hospital next month. Pre-med program. He wants to be a pediatric surgeon. The irony was devastating. The same specialty that had killed his sister, now his chosen path to help other children. The building purchase, the eviction threat, it's going to come out eventually. When it does, the Brennans will realize their anonymous donor is connected to the lawyer who failed them. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. I can't let them think I was trying to buy their silence or manipulate them. They deserve better than that. I looked out at the market, watching tourists navigate between fish vendors and flower stalls, everyone focused on their own small piece of happiness. Such ordinary concerns compared to the wreckage we were discussing. What are you asking me to do? Sell me the building. Let me shut down the firm properly, with dignity. Help the remaining clients transition to other lawyers, pay the staff their severance, give Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia a chance to disappear quietly. She leaned forward. And then help me tell the Brennans the truth about everything. About the anonymous donations, about our family's connection to Emma's case, about why they deserve to know the whole story. And my parents? Get what they've always deserved, consequences for their actions, just not public destruction. Her voice was steady now, resolved. Sometimes the cruelest punishment isn't revenge, Alex. It's having to live with what you've done. I thought about my father's script for my destruction, my mother's cardiac episodes, the weight of carrying shame that grows heavier every year instead of lighter. Maybe Jennifer was right. Maybe watching them disappear into obscurity, knowing they'd sacrificed their son for nothing, was justice enough. 12 million, I said finally. But I have conditions.